Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Odd Thoughts podcast. My name is Gunther, and I'm your host, and welcome to episode 10. If you're someone who likes to think about the everyday odd thoughts, then this might be the podcast for you. I hope to be, semi informative, semi entertaining, just try to do my best. So if that's your type of content, then I appreciate you listening. So today's episode for episode 10, I kind of had a good idea of maybe trying to dive outside of just directly talking about mental health. It's still something that kind of runs a line with mental health, but really trying to do more of like a real world scenario, if you will. So I wanted to talk about meeting people, making connections with people, whether it be just like trying to open up just that basic connection with people, or you wanted something a little deeper like friendship, or maybe something intimate like dating or whatever, or if you're an introvert or if you're an extrovert, if you're someone who likes the close friend group, or you like to have as many people in your friend group as possible. And also, like, what do you get out of people and what do you give to people? Something that I know that I for sure struggle with is making those connections and trying to meet people. And I try my best so that when I have that connection opened, whether it be like through someone introducing me or something like that, or someone approaching me, I try my best to to try to keep it, try to be as invigorated in it as possible. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into episode 10, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who's been listening. And how's everybody doing? I know I'm doing okay. I try to tell myself that every day. You know what I'm saying? Today's episode, I kind of also am trying to hone in the timing a little bit with like how long these episodes last. I get really into talking a little bit, and sometimes I get a little bit jumbled talking, jumbled brained a little bit. And I know I kind of run around laps on certain topics, and I try to reiterate myself a lot. So I don't know how well I'm going to do with making things more concise, but that's kind of the idea for today's episode. Also, is I want to try to make it a little more concise. Try to run it between about 30 to 45 minutes, and trying to do that with all my other podcasts, because I think that's like the sweet spot. And I know that like the last few episodes I've kind of done like kind of longer episodes a little bit. They've kind of gone like 50 minutes, and I had like the one that was like an hour and 15. So longer episodes, but I know that like maybe if I had like, a video aspect to my podcast, or if I had maybe guests on, that, an hour doesn't seem that bad, because then you're kind of just riffing a little bit. But when I'm kind of just by myself, and you only hear my voice, and I'm kind of more talking about specific topics, like I think that 30-minute to 45-minute range is best. It's the best thing. And so I'm going to do my best to do that today. I try to keep everything, relatively quick, and if I start to ramble a little bit, then just try to push myself along, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm faithful in it. I feel good about it. Also, I'm trying to switch up what I think about with like podcasting too. I feel like I've really put a lot of pressure on myself when it comes to podcasting, specifically when it comes to trying to come up with good topics, and I want to always have something that I do feel strongly about when I talk. When I talk about these things, and when I hop on the mic and stuff like that. But I also know that it maybe puts a little pressure on me sometimes to like want to just like heavily research a specific thing, or I get so single track minded that I'm not like, asking the right questions, or I'm not really writing down the right kind of outline for myself. So that's something that I'm trying to take that balance, and maybe trying to do podcasts, like start to do podcasts where I can be a little more, random a little bit. I had that one podcast where I kind of just was like riffing a little bit, and then I played that game, the 6 Degrees of Separation, which I have all like the names like right next to me. But that was fun. And I won't always do maybe necessarily games, but like there are plenty of topics that I think like I always like it's and like when I read articles and stuff like that, or just thinking of these random kind of ideas that I don't think I could do like a whole episode on necessarily. So I have the idea of maybe like if I can throw together a few of the few of the ideas, and they don't have to be generally related to each other, just something to fill in a good like 30 to 45-minute episode. And so trying to do that, trying to maybe I'll start trying to throw in like those kind of episodes too. Cause like I said, I love doing like these more themed topics, and I enjoy it because it's something personable to me, and I know that people can relate to, and I have a certain enjoyment sometimes when I talk about the uncomfortable things. It makes me feel very human that I can sit there and relate things. It doesn't make me feel better than anybody or anything like that. It just or any superiorness. It's just the fact that I can talk about those uncomfortable things makes me feel human. Makes me feel normal. So but I don't need to always do that. I don't think everybody always wants to hear that. And I think it'll give me more confidence too if I'm not always so centered on like those kind of topics cuz even when I'm coming up with like topics and I'm doing the outline for it, I kind of feel like a little bit like sometimes I'm getting a little like preachy in a way. Or like, I'm kind of coming at myself in a angle of, well, what do you know? Like why are you writing about this? Why are you talking about this? But I think I'm trying my best to offer maybe like a voice that's relatable to the my best extent. I don't want to. Sometimes you may watch a podcast that are based on mental health, and it feels like you're kind of getting talked at, and you're giving these outlines, and or you're getting given outlines about stuff, and it feels a little like the language may be lost in between you and the person you're watching a podcast about, or you have people that talk about mental health but don't really dive into it. They kind of like bounce off of it, and that's okay too because you just don't know like how people are going to respond to it. So, and if maybe for my own, my own ease, that I want to hear a voice that's relatable. I would love to like be able to be that voice. So, when I hop up on here, I just want to be able to open up questions about these topics. I think that's kind of where my angles at mostly is I just want to open up the conversation. I'm not giving you any specific answers to anything necessarily or trying to tell you this is how things are necessarily. And I mean, sometimes maybe my language kind of reflects like that I'm trying to be definitive like that, but I'm really not. I just want to ask the questions and open up the thought for people because I also think that people don't know what questions to ask themselves. So that's all I really want to do. I'm just trying my best to do something like that, to try to open up those questions and just really get the topic being talked about. And really try to push that it's not just about like saying like accepting that you have something, mentally wrong with you or whatever, or accepting that this is just how life is. It's about going beyond just the conversation. It's opening the conversation to ask the really hard questions because that's a big thing is like I love asking myself questions that make myself uncomfortable. I could be so convinced on something and I'm so driven on trying to think a certain way, but I gotta think about the other side. If I think about the left, I gotta think about the right. If I think about the up, I gotta think about the down. So it's tough. And I love asking those questions that don't always appease me or don't always make me feel very comfortable. So that's something that I want to kind of do. Not try to test anybody's mind too much or call anybody out. just trying to be just trying to be your average person that has a open voice and being in that weird position between like I'm 27 years old, so like I'm a very young millennial and a very old like Gen Z. I consider myself more millennial because of what the things I like and stuff like that, but I want to be able to be that in between voice, not like I'm trying to connect generations or something like that, but when Gen Z has opened up like kind of that conversation of mental health and it feels like millennials just never talked about it. I kind of want to be able to be that voice of like, hey, we should probably talk about it and like, but not in the ways of just affirming. Like we need to open up these questions and you need to find answers for these questions. It's not always that definitive too, but you want to find answers. You don't want to walk around not knowing what's going on. I think that's blind and just not a way to live. But it's always but then there's so many circumstances and to where it's hard. You don't feel like people listen to you, or you don't feel like you know where to go, and you don't want to be on pills and medication, or you don't want to talk to someone, which is fair enough. I don't think like I said, there's not a blueprint for these solutions, these issues. There's not a blueprint for the solutions to these issues. So you got to figure it out. It's the intricacies of nature. It's the intricacies of human nature. Nobody's the same, and everybody's done different things. You've seen a lot of people that are high functioning people that have problems with their mental health, and you've seen people that seemingly can't do anything, which is like kind of where I feel like I sometimes lie. Is like my mental health I get so amped up in my head, and I get so worked up that I can't do anything. But yeah, So I'm just trying to be a reasonable voice. That's just the whole goal of my podcast. Is I frame it as the Odd Thoughts podcast, but it's the Reasonable Thoughts podcast. You know what I'm saying? The Reasonable Questions podcast. But I just want to be able to do a little bit of, like I said, dive into this mental health stuff, but then also balance and not always have to be so deep and talk about things that it just kind of pop up in my mind because like I'll be thinking a lot. I'll be thinking about a lot of things. So if I don't just get so centered on one topic, then I think it'll also help me like put out more podcasts, or at least like feel like I'm consistently recording podcasts or whatever. All right, let's move on, I guess. Okay, I appreciate y'all letting me ramble a little bit, but yeah. So episode 10, it's kind of a good milestone, huh? 10 episodes in, and I've been at it for a month, a little over a month or whatever. But today's topic, I want to talk about meeting people, making connections with people. Something that I know that I struggle with 100%. I've never been like a kid that, growing up, a kid, teenager, adult that's had a lot of friends, but I do enjoy making friends. But I've always tried to keep them pretty close. Like I try to keep it a smaller group, and because I know that I'm not someone that likes to be around a lot of people, and I'm always in the line of like I don't want to like have to split my energy too much because then I feel like I'm like I'm not like paying attention to certain friends or certain people in my life or something like that, or just certain acquaintances. It's not necessarily always about like when you meet people and make connections with people, it's not always about becoming friends with them. Sometimes people are so like in passing or whatever, or like they mean to something to you in a different way, like your boss or something like that, or whatever, or family and stuff like that. You didn't really know your family growing up and stuff like that, and stuff like that. I keep saying that, sorry, but it's one of those things where meeting people isn't just meeting people to make friends or to date or something like that. So I like the idea of it's being kind of uncomfortable, but then when you do it and you kind of get to be more comfortable with this, then it becomes easier a little bit. It feels like you kind of have to like play a long game with being open to making connections and being susceptible and however like little physical cues you have to give and stuff like that. You have to play the long game with that stuff. So and I'm someone that I just so shut off. I get so judgmental myself. So I know that I'm not very approachable, if you will. So, and I don't make myself very available all the time. But yeah, but in today's day and age, it feels like there's kind of like a plethora of ways to connect with people. For so long, it was, for hundreds of years, it was just meeting people in person. Whether that's kind of your own nature of engaging in someone, or someone comes up to you, which is that's a blessing in its own. But also like when you have like a friend or an acquaintance that puts two people together. That to me has always been like an easier connection when I get introduced. And a lot of the times, like it feels like the friends I've made and any girl I've ever dated has been through a third party, through another friend being introducing us. And so that helps me with being an introverted person. But now, as the time has gone on, in person, meeting people, in person connection isn't the only way to do things. It feels like, with the ever expanding market of social media, that almost seemingly kind of connects you to every single person in the world. Even like if you look on a smaller scale, every person in your city, at least. So there's an endless amount of potential to meet people, and whether you're up on Facebook and someone leaves a comment, you're like, oh, I know this person, I think, and you message them or something like that, or you go on like Tinder or something like that and you match with someone and you message them or something like that. So there's that opening engagement right off and I think it's kind of a beautiful thing in that there are more ways and more aspects of making connections with people and meeting people. I like to try to believe that I want to be that type of person that sits in, or that goes out in public, and I go to a bookstore, I go to the grocery store, or maybe I'm out like hanging out, and I want to be able to go up to someone, like I said, whether it be like a girl because I think she's cute, or be like, I just think like, oh man, I want friends, so this guy seems like he'd be cool, or girl, I can be friends with girls too. But it's one of those things where or even just a simple basic, just meeting people. Sometimes you just need that basic hi, how are you? A little bit of that small talk. Even though everybody cringes on the small talk nowadays. I know that I don't think small talk and really like is in my like vocabulary in a way because my small talk is like long talk. I feel like I ramble sometimes and I get pretty immediately like into conversation. Small talk is weird. But and it's besides the fact. It's just with all these different ways of kind of meeting people, there's maybe some sort of comfortability that you can take in that. You can be a little bit comfortable knowing that if you're not necessarily out in public all the time, or you don't have a lot of friends introducing you to other people, that you can meet people other ways. That's why I do like social media a lot, commenting on videos and stuff like that, or commenting on posts and stuff, because that can kind of engagement even in the comments section underneath people's posts. And people like just talking back and forth. And even that's kind of like basic connection you can make with someone. And then the endless possibilities of then kind of how deep do you want that? So it's time tested and very true tested that in person connection I feel like is most strong. There's a certain like you can't really hide away from that in person connection. So you kind of got to be like forward in a way. You kind of have to be like in there, going up there, being the person, being you kind of, you can let off a little bit and have to you don't have to give every single bit of your, personality away, but inevitably you can't hide away. So things are going to show through, and that's kind of a beautiful thing, but also that's harsh. Makes you feel awkward. I get a little awkward, and I feel embarrassment a little bit. I don't know if I'm outrightly embarrassed about things, but that's a tough thing sometimes. Then on the other hand, when you do like social media and maybe you message someone, you DM someone or whatever, that kind of gives you a little more ease of like, oh, they don't see you. They may see your pictures or whatever, but they don't know you. So you can kind of like be a little more freeing of how you act, and you can let off a little more of your personality in a weird way. But then like, then when the physical in person meeting happens, that could put a little pressure on you too. But it's there's so many different ways, and for me, I think always one of the best ways is something I've been very lucky is that having friends that want to introduce me to other people, which is a beautiful thing. I just don't get that a lot anymore, but it's because I just don't have a lot of friends. So, and I think the idea of having to also be that person, you got to be the person that engages with other people, and you got to send the message to someone on social media. So I try to shift my mindset to that a little bit, which is hard because like I'm a very introverted person. And that's a big thing is also this is deciding that are you introverted or are you extroverted? When you're an introvert, it's kind of hard to even put yourself, out there even with people you already know. I don't always want to be like talked to by my family or seen by my family, and I don't want to sound super selfish with that and be like, f my family because that's false. I love my family, but I just don't want to be seen sometimes. I just don't want to be heard from. I just don't want to be like I just don't want to interact sometimes. So being introverted kind of stops me from putting myself out there and possibly being open to meeting people and engaging with people, and that's a tough thing. And it's in a lot of my thoughts. I think my introvertedness comes a lot with that inner thinking of poor thoughts of myself, and that's just not always true. Because you will find that person probably inevitably that kind of gels with you. I've had friends. I've had people in my life that like spending time with me. So even though I have their reflection of me is not gonna trump how I feel about myself, it's just not gonna reflect directly on how people get along with me. And then you got like the other side of stuff. You got extroverts who seemingly when you're like extroverted, you're constantly you put yourself out there. So you're intermingling with a lot of people at times. And whether it's just like quick little acquaintances and quick little connections or you're just making tons of friends, which is a blessed thing too. I don't think it's a bad thing to be really good at or be bad or good at social interactions. Everybody has levels to it. The idea is that when you make these connections, you want to try to strengthen them. But you have to be real with yourself and think like, well, am I good with like letting myself out there and engaging in these types of things, or am I just not that type of person? Because there will be inevitably times when probably people come to you, and you just got to know when those things happen that those signs are there. I'm someone that I'm so bad at reading social cues. Like I'm not very good at that stuff. So I don't know when people are being necessary. I know when your tone's friendly, but I don't know when you're trying to be like friendly with me, or like when you want to like hang out with me or spend time with me. I'm not good at reading at that stuff. So I'm, and not everybody's gonna come up to me and be like, "Hey, I want to be your friend, Gunther. I want to date you, Gunther." Not everybody's gonna be like that. So, or anybody really is gonna be like that. So, I have to have that conflict, that inner conflict of, even though I'm introverted, I know that I have to be an extrovert, something that I do want to be as an extrovert. And so I have to make the engagements. And I know that the more that I open myself up, and if I put myself in public, and I try to show up, that at least I know that it maybe makes me a little more open than I was before. If I'm at home all the time, nobody knows nobody's aware of me. But if I'm, slow, it's not like if I show up at one grocery store every day, or one, like, bookstore every day, or I go to the gym at this one gym every day, that it's gonna guarantee that I'm gonna meet someone or make connections with people, but it opens up the possibility. That's the kind of the whole point. Also, just being a friendly person, I think having that kind of friendly disposition. And so, like extroverts, it feels like it's just kind of like fluid for them. It feels like it's just easily navigatable for them. Which could be a plus and a downside. When you have a lot of friends and you don't feel like you're giving enough connections to people, or like you're giving enough energy or something like that, that can, swim away, especially when maybe someone meets you and they want to be friends with you, but you just got like other things going on, and you got other friends that maybe they feel super let down. And you really can't just be standing around just worrying about what everybody feels all the time, but that does suck. It's not fun to lose connections with people. But that's a real question, is to think about if you're kind of really super introverted, or if you're super extroverted, in how easy it could be, or and how blessed it is either way. I feel, like I said, I feel blessed sometimes that I don't have friends, that I don't have friends, but I don't have like a lot of friends, because like I can give my energy then to these people pretty specifically, and I feel like I'm kind of, you know I'm able to do as much as possible with these people. But then also, like, when things go wrong, then I'm very directly like, I just didn't give enough energy, and then there's another question there. Yeah, but 100%, before you can even really engage with anybody, it really there sits that self-perception, that kind of self-reflective thoughts. Not everybody's going to be pleased with themselves. You're not going to believe that you're good looking, or you're very personable, or you feel like people tell you you've had a resting bitch face or something like that, and it feeds into that self-perception, and the feeling of being wanted or feeling unwanted or something like that. And that's, I know, in my personal take, it's I feel very unwanted sometimes because of my depression and my anxiety, and I let anger get to me really badly, and there's certain things that make me human, and I work through every day, and I know I'm getting better at, but it makes me feel very unwanted, even by the people that I know that are in my life that I already have a connection with. It makes me feel unwanted even to them. So before even like I said, before even meeting someone, you're already struggling with sometimes that thought of like, oh, am I good enough to even meet someone? Are they going to even be willing to want to be around me, type even thing? Like, I even have a struggle if I'm invited to a party or something like that, like wanting to go to that party because I feel like I'm gonna like harsh the vibe or something like that. Whatever that may entail. I just feel like I might be out of place, and I might harsh every it might and I just might not get along with people. And if I already have that poor thought, and I already have like the denying thought before I'm even in it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not opening myself up. And I can't help but have a little bit of that poor self perception. But you also got to think about maybe that the self perception has to be positive sometimes. So then you flip it on the head. I do think badly about myself sometimes, and I do have my qualms and my certain challenges that I have to go over, but I do know that there are positives to myself. I have had people tell me that they like hanging out with me, and they think I'm smart or something like that, or like if it comes to dating, like, girls telling me that I am good looking, or that they do like being with me and stuff like that. So it's one of those, even in always not trying to also place too much weight on meeting someone. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to, every girl you meet. You don't have to have that intention with being, when it comes to being straight, a straight white man. You know what I'm saying? That I don't have a girl I meet. I don't have to like have intentions like that. I just got to be okay with like making connections. And so realizing that I have the poor self perception of myself, but also realizing that there are those good things about myself, and I need to try to channel those things. And if people tell you, that you're acting a certain way, then you could take that to heart, but also realize that that's just not the definitiveness of you. And if you meet one person and they don't really vibe with you, that's just not how it's going to be with everybody. You because you're going to vibe with people. You will inevitably make connections. And I think that maybe like everybody maybe needs a little bit of like an affirmation of telling you that you're good enough that people do want you around. It telling people that they're doing a good job and telling people that they're good, telling people giving people props is not a bad thing. But you also got to be very aware that you also have to be able to be criticized. Just as you should be propped up, you should be criticized. So that's a very normal thing to have that conflict of self-perception. But also knowing that that may not reflect how you interact with people. That's a big thing is just knowing that like because you think so poorly of yourself that or you feel unwanted, that doesn't mean that you're not wanted. You just gotta put yourself out there. And that's a tough thing to do. Something I know that it's very tough for me, very tough of putting myself out there. Yeah, but, as I put myself out there, and I know that, like, as I see it with other people, like, it opens you up. You have to kinda show up. You gotta kind of be in spaces and when people invite you out to do things and you gotta be a little open to that type of thing. And, being available and being open to those connections, whether it be you going to engage someone or someone coming up to you, there's subtleties to it. It's you have to kind of get over to go to engage someone and doing that, it's like you have to get over that personal barrier. But then how do you do it when you're being approached, being available? How does that work? I'm like I said, I've never been very good with like social cues, you know what I'm saying? I've never been good with like knowing how to like interact with people without actually interacting with them. Like without actually having to say hi. Like a wave, making eye contact or something like that. That helps. That's something. But it's a mixture of having to kind of like not only just show up, like I said, like if you're like you have to put yourself out in public and around people too. Like if you're going to the grocery store, and I know that usually maybe you go at night because not a lot of people are there. Well, okay, that's on you, and it's just grocery shopping or whatever. But maybe you're trying to meet people or whatever. So maybe think about going grocery shopping during the day when there's people. And that doesn't guarantee, like I said, it never guarantees that you're going to be approached or anything like that. But I think that leads to the long game of being approached, and also just like a more friendly deposition too. I know that I have a little bit of like a resting angry face. It's a little rough sometimes. I can agree with that 100%. I think sometimes like I just look like I'm angry or I look like I'm deep in thought, but I'm not. I'm, I'm just chilling, really, just hanging out. So I know that sometimes that's it. That could be something, but I don't want to look like a goof just like smiling and like trying to make eye contact with people all over the place, waving hi, So been a beautiful thing is like I've been very blessed to have people introduce me to other people. And I think you also have to do that. That's another kind of line is, if you do have a friend that's inviting you out to do stuff or something like that, or maybe you have to be that person that brings people around because maybe you have a friend has a lot of friends. Maybe try to take advantage of that in a way of like, hey, like I'm gonna throw a party at my place. Why don't you maybe invite some of your friends and then we can have a few people. And then that kind of is another way to open up. You have to be willing to meet people, but it's not just like this having the idea in your head of being willing to meet people. And that's such a subtle thing as like I said, I struggle with social cues. So how do I let people know that, I'm open to being talked to? I want to be friends, I'm looking to date someone. Like how do I do that? Or even just like in a basic approachable sense of, I want people to be able to come up to me and ask me questions just in public, like, hey, do you know what the time is? Or hey, do you know where this is? I want people to be able to trust me in those basic conversations. Or I want to have a little confidence when I'm, talking to like the store clerk, being able to have a good conversation or have them say like instead of just the hi, how are you? No, I'm good. Like maybe have them say stuff to me, kind of open that conversation. But you also have to be the initiator. I think that it's a long game when it comes to availability and approachableness because it's not one thing that does it. But as you kind of find these little intricacies, dang, the little things. You once you find the little ebbs and flows of being approachable, you kind of find what does best for you. And also, like always realizing that maybe like you don't always have to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. If you're not someone that wants to be out in public all the time, then that's your thing. And if you go up on the social medias and that's more so your thing, and that's how you kind of open being approached, like you got to kind of realize maybe your approachableness comes with just being on every single app, I guess. But you sometimes have, I think, in social media, you got to engage more so. You have to engage. You can't just be like an approachable person on social media. Even if you look good or like, you're friendly and you post, you maybe have friendly content on your social medias, but you kind of have to engage. That's kind of a forcible, of making yourself available is you have to like engage with someone. But yeah, I said, I don't really know what constitutes being approachable or being available. I know that like doing it yourself and putting yourself out there helps, but how do you like disposition yourself to be approachable, or be known to be available or something like that? Yeah, but once you start, I think, making those kind of connections, and people in whether you start kind of going up to people and making connections, or people are coming up to you and stuff like that, I think there is an inevitable question, even though it is kind of like I feel so harsh, kind of phrasing it like that, like this is what are you going to get out of someone, and also what are you going to give to someone? That's kind of a tough question. Not necessarily in like, what's your status or something like that, or are you super funny, or are you super good looking, like what you bring in that kind of sense, but kind of, sorry, excuse me. But kind of one of those things like, what do you want out of that situation? What do you want out of this connection? It's hard to sit there and always say like, every person you meet, you're like, oh, I want to be friends with them. You may have that kind of idea in head to be friends with people that you meet, or maybe everybody you meet or whatever, but that's not always going to be the intention. That's not always going to be what you're going to do. So you kind of decide that eventually, like when you start kind of maybe even before you meet someone, kind of what do you want out of people? Are you trying to make friends? Or are you trying to find a relationship? Or are you just trying to find people that are going to help you with whatever it may be? And then be very real with yourself, and then think on the opposite end of the spectrum is, what do you give to people? You can't just be a person that kind of abuses the sense of friendship, or the sense of knowing people because you know someone for this, or you're friends with them because of this, or you're dating this person because of whatever. You can't then just be, you know, taking everything from them, or not necessarily taking, but letting them be the only one to give in a relationship, whatever that kind of means. Even, kind of giving, what do you is a big question. Like, especially like, we don't have to think too deeply or too bigly on your status or what money, because you're not going to always make friends with the richest people, or you're not going to make friends because you're rich. You shouldn't, at least. And also with relationships, you shouldn't date someone because of what they necessarily offer, but you're going to ask yourself that. You're gonna, if what they offer is toxic to you, and isn't gonna benefit you, then you got to be real about yourself with that question. You got to be very real that then, like, what benefits me? It's okay to be around different people. Opposites do attract, and sometimes similar people don't work out. So it's very big to think about, like, well, what am I going to get out of this? So if it's generally good, and you're thinking just in those basics of, well, they're funny and they're polite, and I know that they're nice, and usually they like to hang out and do these kind of things, and that kind of gets me out of my shell, or that, like, oh man, I don't have to be friends with this person, but they're a mechanic or something like that, or like, you just generally believe like, oh man, this girl is so beautiful, and she's got such a nice smile, and da 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 da, that those are kind of the things that you want out of others. And then, like I said, you got to be very real to say, what can you give? You don't have to give every single bit, but you got to be able to give every single bit of yourself. You got to make sure that people are going to have that same view kind of you. When they get into the relationship, they don't want to feel like they're giving every bit of themselves, and you're not giving anything about yourself. Whether it be kind of, it doesn't always have to be a personable thing. Like I said, not every relationship's deep, so not everything has to be so personal. But there is going to be an inevitability where there's an exchange of social interactions. If someone's sitting there and they're just telling you all about themselves, or they're kind of the one that reaches out to you more often, and you're just not, then that's kind of hard. You're not really given much. And if you're sitting there in a relationship, and you don't want to act upon, like, you're kind of shadowing your personality, and you know that you're maybe someone that likes to go do these things, but you're kind of like iffy on this person, and you're uncomfortable, then maybe that you're not getting what you want out of that person. Also, you're not giving what you have to that person. So then both sides aren't really winning, or at least aren't like getting what you want out of people. out of each other more so? And that's a deep question, is because things can last a long time and you really not get a much out of someone. And then sometimes it feels like the shorter relationships, these like kind of flash in the pan things end really well because you feel like it was very fulfilling. And I think that kind of equals to a fulfilling thing. You want to feel fulfilled when you make connections with people, even even like a basic sense. You don't want to leave a connection thinking that you kind of you're rude to someone, or you affected the way they thought, or affected their mood, or reiterated something that they had inside their head. But you also can't sit around being all super temperamental and thinking that you're going to offend everybody. But that's a real thing, is when you make those connections, you make interactions with people, that there's a possibility of that. But you can't hang your head on thinking that that's what's going to happen every time. You know, and because not everything, not every situation when you meet people, like I said, is going to be deep. You're not always going to be super deep, deeply connected to people. But that is a real question to think about, not only what you're going to get out of people, but also what you give to others. Something that I know that, like I said, I struggle with my own personal thought. And so I don't think I offer a lot. I think a lot of times I think like I just know that I say I'm not very good looking. I don't make a lot of money. I'm so not very funny all the time. I have anger issues. So I convince myself that I don't have a lot to give, but I know that I do have a lot to give, because I know that I'm a caring person, and I don't make a lot of money because I just don't have a great job or something like that. I'm not good looking. Maybe more so because I just don't treat myself very well. Got a nasty long hair and nasty beard and stuff. That's why I don't want to put myself on camera. Sorry for coughing the mic. One of my podcasts, I will. I'm just gonna, at least trimming up the beard will give me a little more confidence. But yeah, but also so it's not just about, also it's like I said. So you're not always like making deep connections with people. So you're not always gonna meet someone and immediately think, oh, I'm gonna be friends with them, or oh, I'm gonna know them for a long time, or I'm gonna date them or whatever. So a very real thing is questioning how you get along with people. In general sense, I think most of the time, every day as you walk through public, you're generally getting along with others. You're not disturbing people, and you're not getting angry at others, and you're avoiding people. So in a sense, in that way, you're getting along with others. But it's a bigger sense of, then when you're intermingling with people and you're actually trying to maybe open up connections and open up to meeting people, then you got to really understand, like, how well do I get along with others, and specifically getting along with what type of people. Like I said, like, opposites can attract, but also opposites may not attract. Similar people can attract, but also may not attract. And so you're not always going to catch that vibe, I think, from people right off the bat. You're not going to get their whole personality and, everything about their lives when you first meet them. Even in the first few times you meet them or whatever, or talk to them or whatever. So you're not going to know what type of person you're dealing with. And it's probably a little unsure and not very good to sit there and just type people, like, this is what this person is, or what this is what kind of thing is, who this person is, because then that kind of closes off, I think, a little bit on opening your spectrum. You may like not know you needed a certain type of person in your life. So when then that person comes along, and you may have a predisposition that you usually get along with those type of people, or a predisposition that you only get along with one type of person, then I think like you're kind of closing yourself off a little bit. But it's inevitable that you're going to meet so many different types of people, even just outside of being like an introvert or an extrovert. You're going to meet someone that's maybe likes the outdoors or something like that, or they like to play video games, or so you meet these different types of people, or someone who's like super bubbly and like, ditzy kind of, or someone who's like very reserved and kind of held back. So you meet so many different types of people. And I think it's important just to try to get along with everybody. Just trying your best. You don't have to like, appease every single type of person and try to like transform yourself into what they might like, or what they see as like pleasurable or something like that. It's not kind of like, it's not really the point. It's just, the point is more so to try to keep yourself open to everybody. Getting along with everybody, getting along with other people, so that like when those chances come along, that you meet these kind of characters, these certain people in your life, that you're kind of gaining something out of it. You're gaining maybe a new friend that you never thought you would have, or just like, man, I loved talking to that person, even in those basic fleeting moments with people, or dating someone that you never thought you would date. it's something that I love thinking about is I would love through my life. I feel like a lot of my friends were pretty diverse. I wasn't just hanging out with white lower middle class kids. I wasn't just hanging out with who I was. I was hanging out with like black kids and Hispanic kids, and whether they lived in the rich neighborhoods or they lived in the poor neighborhoods, like it didn't matter. If you're an athlete, if you're a nerd, I loved all of it. It was kind of fun. It made me feel like I kind of was like I was like trying my best to do my due diligence to kind of make myself even open to what I might be, because that's the thing too, is like you can kind of meet these people and they might influence you. They will maybe inevitably influence you, because people get influenced by people all the time. So when you're meeting these different types of people and they kind of start to bring those kind of things out of you, and maybe in vice versa, like you bring the things out of them, you bring some type of whatever out of them. That's a beautiful thing. So sometimes opposites do attract and sometimes they don't. And if you're someone that like also like driving home that like being with similar people can help too. Finding people that you can seriously relate to, and people that being that person for others too. If you're someone who's a little, I know that sometimes I don't necessarily always want to be friends with people that are like me. That'd be a little depressing all the time, and we wouldn't be really hanging out too much. So I know that I need people that are going to be a certain type of way. But then if I'm surrounding myself with different types of people, then it makes me feel singular, which is just not true. I know that my struggle is equated by millions of other people, and the things that I like and my personality traits are similar to others. And I'm the only Gunther, or at least I'm the only me Gunther. People have got the name Gunther, but I'm the only me. So I got to do my best to like realize that I have my own components, but it's cool to meet people with the same similar things, but also like maybe trying to get along with the possibility of getting along with people that have different personality traits. Because that's fun. That's something I think about too. I love thinking about trying to diversify the group. And then, furthermore, is also realizing that maybe that you're not someone that needs a big extended group of people around you. That maybe like just a little, like a few solid family members and friends is kind of all you need. And that goes a little bit with being extroverted, being introverted, and a little bit also with kind of that availableness and kind of that openness. If you're someone who likes to keep it close, kind of like me, like I've only ever really liked to have a few friends at a time, or it feels like that's really all I can handle is a few friends at a time. So I try to keep things close. I try to have like the couple friends that I'm really good with, and even with my family, I'm not super close with all my family. So I know that there's certain family members like my dad and my sisters and a couple cousins that I can be super close with, my grandparents and stuff like that. That I know I can be super close with, and that satisfies me. Having that close knitness is good for me. It lets me feel like I can give my energy to people, and even at times I do struggle with like I'm not texting this person, I haven't hung out with this person forever, but I don't have a lot of people I have to worry about. And I don't have so many friends, I'm just forgetting about my friends. That's I guess a good problem is having a lot of friends that you forget that you have certain people. But then, like, if you're someone who likes the extended group, then that's not a problem either. Maybe you're someone who just likes to kind of have like, it's not like everybody's your friend necessarily, but you have these acquaintances and the possibility of, making more out of those relationships. And I think they're leaving that openness is always okay. Because people, I think, reflect the same way. People know usually just the same as you may know that you're not always going to be friends with everybody, but being friendly is okay. So it's a very real question. Just think like, can you handle like a lot of people, and can you handle a lot of friends, and are you persistently the person that wants to try to keep making connections and stuff like that? And is it equating to that extended group? Because even when you put yourself out there, not like I said, not everybody's going to be susceptible to you. So you may like be trying to meet as many people as possible, but your group stays close. And so whether you have that close group or extended group, just trying to give energy to everybody is more important than anything. So as I know that like as I have a close group of people around me, I'm doing my best to try to just handle it with them. It's hard to like it would be great to have like 100 great acquaintances, or at least people that like knew me and said what's up and sorry. But like, like even like on social media, I have friends and stuff like that. Like, but like not all of them are necessarily my close friends. You know what I'm saying? So, but I would like to think that like I'm friendly with these people. And that there is a possibility that maybe I could be become like good friends with these people. That there is that really good possibility of that. But also I'm very real with myself and thinking that, I'm a very introverted person and I kind of just like keeping it close and I don't want to really extend it past anybody. I can getting along with everybody, but I don't want necessarily everybody to be my friend. You know, I try my best, but it's hard. So I get very real with myself on that. And and even like I said, so even when you start to introduce yourself and you make connections, or you kind of put yourself into that availability, however that proceeds to you, and you start kind of getting those connections, you start kind of making connections, you start to realize that maybe not everybody is your type, or you're not everybody's type. That's a very real question of not always being accepted amongst people, but that should never be a big signifier of who you are, definitely, because it's not. Because just because you didn't get along with XYZ, ABC, whatever, doesn't mean that, JKL, MNO, that those won't be there for you. So it's kind of it's okay to not always be accepted. There is inevitably a place where you will be accepted amongst people that are willing to make those connections. And also to not hold it too strongly on thinking like that you need to make friends and stuff like that, or when you meet someone and they're kind of being friendly, that didn't you have to exactly reciprocate it, because things are ebb and flow. And once you meet people, people will come and go. And the people that really matter are going to stick around and realize who you are. So when you're not always hitting them up and stuff like that, and you're not always, coming through, they realize that. And they're not feeling too offended by that. So you always got to think also that it's just not always your fault, too. Um, you're not always going to always come off as the best, too. Everybody has bad days, or you're just kind of not in the right moment. You kind of just timed it weird. So it's okay to not be someone's vibe, not to vibe with someone. And even when you're trying your best and you have maybe that like predetermined sight and through predetermined idea in your head that like, oh, I want to be accepted. I'm really want to be accepted, that it's okay if you're not. As long as you're trying your best and you put yourself out there, and when someone came up to you and engaged with you, that you were open to that, and you were, and even just the putting yourself out there is big. So just hold yourself on that you took that attempt, and you tried your best, always kind of viewing yourself as trying your best. And when you're rejected in a social interactions, to not just say that it's because of who you are, doing your very best to try to say that it's maybe just because of this one moment, we didn't get along, it's whatever. Yeah, because like I said, it's not always your fault. And other people are going to do the same thing. Like you'll meet people and they feel a little weird and they feel a little off, and you kind of maybe had and they maybe had the same type of hope. So you realize that everybody kind of goes through that. You're not always just going to get along with everybody. And so that leads even to further and more to appreciating the connections you make, which is kind of like, that's kind of the ending sentiment to everything. Is, you've kind of gotten past, the ways of making connections and meeting people. And are you introverted, are you extroverted, are you someone that, like, do you like having a lot of people, what do you give to people, it's one of those things. You start to ask yourself all these questions, or not necessarily directly, phrasing these questions, but you're going through those thought processes. And so when you kind of come through the cycle of making connections and meeting people, you kind of come back around to, then you realize the people that you have made connections with, whether they're around or not, whether they're still your friend or not, or they're alive or not. You start to realize that those connections were amazing. And you got to hold yourself on that you did something right when you made these connections. Because they're going to be bad ones, 100%. But also maybe appreciating the bad ones, being very real about appreciating that, this didn't go well, so maybe I dodged a bullet on that. That, things started out good in this friendship and this connection, and or whatever that I had with this person, but then unfortunately things went south. So you got to appreciate that and accept that that the ones that you do have that are positive connections, and the positive people in your life, whether they be, really good friends, or just those, like I said, your neighbor, or like your boss, or just like coworkers, the passing fleeting ones, and or even the more intimate ones. Like, just realize that you've done good on just that. Appreciate those people. Should make sure that you're constantly showing those people that energy too. And when you maybe have that insight of like, oh man, I don't think they like me anymore, just try not to feed into that. Try to remember like what you guys maybe have already been through. And maybe if it hasn't been a lot, and you've tried to put effort in, and maybe they're trying to put effort in, and things are just not reciprocated, that, like I said, you let it go and appreciate it that it happened. Because, your time on earth is not guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to to come in contact with a lot of people either. So your time is very fleeting in some ways. So when you meet people, even in those fleeting times, you try to do your best to just be a good person. You try to do your best to be you. And if someone doesn't gel with that, and maybe someone does, then you got to really give that energy. I keep saying give it energy, but show appreciation for that, because I love that. It's human nature. It's the little flows that human nature has. Some days you're going to be likable by a lot of people, and some days you're not. You know, you're gonna be accepted by this group of people, and maybe not by this group of people. So you appreciate where you can find those connections, and appreciate that even people want to come to connect with you, or that people want to introduce you to other people. That's a beautiful thing. So just the little wins, I think, is more so always being appreciated. Appreciate the little wins in general as it comes to life. So yeah, something I know that 100% I'm really big on. I don't meet a lot of people, and I try to make connections, but I'm just not very good at it. But when I do make those connections, that I try to give it as much energy, and I try to give it as a positive of an outlook as possible. Not necessarily with the intentions of making it this super deep connection with someone, but just making sure that they leave at least thinking that it was good, and I leave thinking that at least I did something that was good, that I gave something positive and I got something positive out of it. So yeah, so there you go. Episode 10, meeting people, making connections, Where are we at? 51 and a half minutes. Wow. So a little bit longer than the 45 minutes I said, but I'm trying. I'm trying to lessen it as I go along. But yeah, just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'm done. I just that's something that hits a little bit. It hits close to home. Something also that I said, like, outside the mental health thing. It kind of has to do with mental health a little bit, but it's more so something in the physical realm. Having to navigate in the physical realm, and I like I said, something I struggle with is making connections, and making friends, and just meeting people, and holding on to those connections. So I become appreciative to the people that are in my life now and that show me love. So, and I think everybody should stick with that sentiment. Just know that if you don't got a lot of friends, and you're not dating people, or even just like know anybody, that's not a signifier for anything. There's not a definite X amount of people that you should have in your life. So with the few that you do, or if you're just by yourself, then appreciate what you have. Appreciate that you're whole, appreciate that you can maybe give the energy to the few people that are in your life. But yeah, all right. I'm gonna keep the outro a little bit short, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But I appreciate everybody that listens to my podcast. Anybody that listened to this episode, this is episode 10, and like all my other episodes, I posted up on YouTube. It's the Odd Thoughts podcast on YouTube. I have tons of other episodes, so if you want to go check those out, I'd really appreciate it. If you're someone that like is all over social media, I have a couple other places you can find me. I'm on Facebook. I go by Gunther Getlicker on Facebook. Both of those G's are capitalized. I also have an Instagram, which goes Gunther_Getlicker. Both those G's are lowercase. And then I have Twitter, which I go by @OneMikeGG, two uppercase G's on that. And like I said, go on YouTube as well, the Odd Thoughts podcast, where you can find my other episodes. And I appreciate everybody that's listening. I appreciate anybody that finds my voice comfortable. And if you're someone that wants to engage with me, engage with me. I really want to make this something maybe a little bit bigger in that sense, where people can reach out to me and feel comfortable. But anyways, I appreciate anybody that listens to this podcast. My name is Gunther Getlicker, and this has been the Odd Thoughts podcast. And just remember, everybody, be excellent to each other.